Hey guys, I'm Max92 and welcome back to another tryout. Today's tryout is on West of Dead, and because West of Dead is a cowboy game, I've got a sort of poncho on, like the main character does. He has a red poncho. I'm still doing like a Spookstober thing, so I'm still dressing up because it's fun. This is a game that I got on Steam. I don't remember where I got it on Steam, but I have it on Steam, got it somewhere. And so I figured it was something that was sort of on my list before I got it on Steam to play, because it's on like Game Pass. And so I figured I'll do this, I'll throw this in for like the post-October continuing spooks situation, and we can talk about it then. This game is a very stylish game. Just sort of looking at it, like its whole aesthetic is very stylish. It's got this like Hellboy-ish look, this very comic book cowboy aesthetic that is both in the visuals and in the music, and I think that really comes together very well. The only like criticism I have of that whole aesthetic is that the way that the game does its adaptive music system can feel a tiny bit clunky. It just doesn't all like line up exactly the way that it feels like it is supposed to. But like the aesthetic is really just works very well, and I really like it. It's maybe a little dark. I think I want the red of the main character's poncho, Mason, whatever. I want his poncho to like pop a little more, to be a bit more red. But otherwise, the aesthetic is very, very good. West of Dead is another roguelike that I'm talking about on the channel because they're very popular. And there are a lot of them right now. But I feel like this one seems a bit more accessible to me. Maybe it's just my familiarity with isometric twin-stick shooters. This one doesn't feel like its difficulty curve, at least on whatever the default difficulty is as steep as a lot of other roguelikes are, which can put off new players pretty easily. Make them feel like they're not progressing. That doesn't seem like the case here with West of Dead, where I beat a boss of some kind on my first actual run after the tutorial, and then my second actual run ran me all the way through to the end of the first chapter. And I don't know how exactly it saves. It looks like you also start at the beginning of chapters, so having finished chapter 1, I don't have to do any of that again. Which is my favorite type of sort of like roguelike, where you sort of, yeah, you're doing these runs over and over again, but when you defeat a boss, that is just done, and you don't have to do that again. You know, there is definitely something in the repetitiveness that puts me off a little bit, though I can also see why getting to a point where you've basically perfected a boss and you can just go through it without even thinking about it is also cool in its own way. So that's just my preference is this style, but I understand why people like it the other way as well. My playtime, when I ended off, I did 2 runs where I died at the end of them, and my playtime was like almost 2 hours-ish. I don't remember exactly how much. But it was like an hour and a half to 2 hours. So that's about where I'm speaking from. Overall, the game mostly feels pretty good to play. There's some issues to how it sits out on mouse and keyboard, where I switched over to playing on a controller because this is a twin stick. So like playing with sticks is optimal for the genre rather than WASD in your mouse. I think it works for some games, but I feel like in this one, it works better on a controller. This progression system, to me, feels most similar to Dead Cells. I don't know, I've not played that much of that many roguelikes. A lot of them I've played like for a few hours and then didn't play much more of them. I haven't really had the chance to get too deep into the progression systems of many of them, but Dead Cells is one that I have played a decent amount of. And The way that this game's progression seems set up seems pretty similar to that. In Dead Cells, you invest cells into, leveling up things so that you can lock them so that they will show up in your RNG. And in this game, you invest sins into items so that they will show up in your RNG. So it seems pretty similar in that regard, but it's also, they're very different games, just with the similar systems on the outside. That's just where I can compare to. I don't know other games that do exactly what that is that I can think of, but if you like that progression, I think that this is another game that sort of has that similar style. Now to talk about some of the negatives that I had, one of the negatives, and I think the bigger one, is that it's kind of janky in some ways. There was a situation where there were these big rock creatures that walked with a very slow walk cycle, and their visuals were very stuttery. It looked like they weren't really made to move that slow, or I don't know if maybe they're screwing up. And it also might be a graphics issue with my graphics card. It's hard to tell, but it's that was a thing that I noticed. And then also in the boss for chapter 1, there was some weird AI stuff where he was just going back and forth over this one piece of cover and then would sit behind it and not do anything for a while, to where I could just sit there and be like, pew, 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 pew. And there was very little challenge to that because of the boss fight being kind of broken. But for the most part, otherwise, I didn't see that much. It's just there's a little bit of jank in it that doesn't feel like it matches up with how consistent the aesthetic makes it feel. If the aesthetic makes it feel like it's sort of a higher tier of production, and then you have to consider the fact this is still indie, this is probably a small studio still, and so it still has some of the quirks that you might find and the little bugs that you might find in an indie title, but I think it has that really high quality production value that makes it just feel a little more out of place. And then my second sort of negative is that starting out, going through the dungeons or whatever you want to call them, it can feel a bit meandering, like you're just not really going anywhere. Because a lot of roguelikes in this sort of style, this top-down whatever, will set out rooms that are pretty distinct and pretty square and set together, so you can sort of really understand where you're going and that sort of thing. And because this has this sort of more organic level design aesthetic, it makes it feel like you're just sort of wandering sometimes without really a purpose. And that gets better as you play more and you get sort of an idea of how the routes through these places work. But it does feel like at the beginning a little meandering, to where you're just I don't know where I'm going or what I'm doing. But that also might just be somewhat intentional, because the character doesn't really know where he's going or what he's doing. So it could be intentional, but I'm going to put it as a negative because it was something that I noticed that was sort of pulling me out of the experience when I first started. But other than those couple negatives that I mentioned, it's pretty fun little shoot game. It's got, again, its aesthetic is really, really good. Ron Perlman voices the main character.
Here I was again. Either Death was getting lazy, or he had other plans for me.
It has its really satisfying visuals when you're dodging things and shooting and stuff like that. It's all very fun and fluid for the most part, and besides that little bit of jank on the top layer, I'd recommend it, and I would play more of it, which is what leads me to saying that this game passes tryout. Woo, passes tryout. That's what I do on this show. If you've not seen it before, I just give pass fail. Would I recommend it, and will I play more? Yes. I don't really have much else to say about West of Dead other than what I've already just said, so we'll just wrap this up here. If you go to the description, find a link. It's begin.ai link. It'll take you to a place where you can find links to my Twitter, Patreon, Bandcamp, Redbubble, etc. Click that, go to those places, do what you do in those places. Like the video if you liked it, dislike it if you didn't. Subscribe if you want to keep up with this and other shows. Comment if you played West of Dead, if you played Dead Cells, if you played Hades, any other roguelike? What's your favorite roguelike? Leave a comment down there and share the video. Do the things. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!